backporting new features is you inevitably also backport new bugs. And so that makes it very, very difficult to work with changes on a stable branch. So we really encourage projects to separate out maintenance on stable branches from trunk development, and to have a regular cadence of releases so that they always know this is the stable branch that we're supporting. Bug fixes go there, and only bug fixes, only things that affect the stability of the software, security of the software go there. We make very few changes there. And on the trunk, we can make more aggressive changes because we have good testing, because we have good visibility, lots of people running the trunk, and so on. And so we separate those two out, have good policies for maintenance and good policies for trunk, for development. From our perspective in Ubuntu, when we make a release, we make a lot of commitment to supporting that release. We want, if there's a security problem, we want to produce a security fix. We want to produce, if an upstream, for example, produces a point release of their software, say we ship with widgets 1.8, and upstream produces widgets 1.8.1, we would like to deliver 1.8.1 to all of the users of the release that got 1.8. But we can only do that if we know that that release isn't going to introduce suddenly new behaviors and lots of new bugs. So when we're working with an upstream project which understands stable maintenance and understands the importance of just making security fixes and data loss fixes and stability fixes only, then we're more confident, we're more likely to ship the point release. So the argument we have with those upstreams is, you're going to put all of this work into making 1.8.1. Most users will only get it if we put it into Ubuntu. But we can only put it into Ubuntu if we're confident that it only fixes problems and doesn't add new problems. So it's kind of a bargain that we can do with upstreams. We will commit to shipping their point releases if they will commit to having very good and rigorous practices, maintenance practices for their stable branches. And then the last tool that I think is interesting and important at the moment for quality is automated crash reporting. We put a tool into Ubuntu called Apport, which we built in Ubuntu, which effectively detects whenever a piece of software crashes. And it gathers up the relevant information for that piece of software. It might gather up the crash, effectively snapshot, what we call the core dump, or it might gather the sort of stack trace, the list of function calls that had been called before it crashed. It might gather other relevant information, log files or configuration files. And then it says to the user, do you want to submit all of this information to the project, effectively? And then we have that information coming in from hundreds of thousands of users. It shows us very quickly which problems are the most important problems. There are always problems in software, and if you know which problems are affecting the most people, then you can focus your attention on the things which will have the biggest impact in making software feel more usable, feel more reliable, feel more stable to your users. So it's been a very, very useful tool. And we're now starting to work with the upstreams directly so that they can use that same tool for their trunk development. I was talking earlier about having packages of trunk. So this means, in theory, you could commit to your project this morning, then new packages get built because there's a change to the code. Users out there who want to be running your latest code then immediately get that update in the afternoon, and if it crashes, then you have a complete crash report in the evening. So it becomes a very fast cycle for developers, effectively. They're committing their code, and then they're watching to see what's happening to the users of that code almost in the same day. And they can very quickly spot the problems as they happen. So the last area that I think we could do well to focus on in the free software ecosystem is the field of design. And I think this is really important as we want free software to become used by more and more folks who don't think of themselves first and foremost as computer users. Essentially, it requires changing the way we prioritize new code, new capabilities, and changing the way we analyze what's important and decide how we're going to present those features. The very, very best open source projects have generally always been led by people who instinctively understood both software, both engineering and design. So we had folks from Mozilla here earlier. Firefox is an example of this. Firefox emerged like a phoenix out of a very large and complicated code base where people had tried to put more and more and more functionality into the Mozilla and the Netscape code base. And along came a very, very small team that said, you know what, the most important pieces that users really want, are these pieces over here. And here's how we can expose those capabilities very crisply, very cleanly. And so out of that enormous code base, they produced something crisp and clean and focused and usable called Firefox. And we all know the result. It absolutely exploded. It became, I think, the most successful and most important piece of open source software to our movement, effectively, in terms of raising awareness and demonstrating what's possible with free software. And so it was really the combination of great engineering and great design that made that possible. There are other projects which have done very, very well because they put design first. And what I'm starting to believe is that we can achieve this in all of our free software projects. But what we have to do is we have to consciously make space in our project leadership and in our project organizations for people who are passionate about design. It is not, or I should say, design is in fact a discipline. It is a skill. It is a profession, and it's not necessarily something that if you're talented in engineering, you're going to be talented at design. So we need to make room within our projects for there to be effective conversations between people who are very passionate about engineering and being efficient, writing code that runs very quickly, or writing code which uses resources very efficiently, which are interested in that sort of constraints. Conversations between them and people who are really interested in what users want, how users will use the software, what will impact users' experience of the software, and so on. It really requires starting from the point of view of what the user will be looking for, rather than starting from the point of view of what will be cool to engineer. Now, I don't believe that these two are in opposition at all. When we've worked with projects and we've got sort of open source developers who run a project together with designers, by the end of the week, the engineers are really quite excited because they understand two things. They understand first, this means that if they build software that's more usable, they'll actually, their work will be benefiting more people. People will be more excited about their work. People will be more likely to come in and join them and help on the engineering front. But also, there are still lots of interesting engineering problems to be solved. And in fact, often designers will create very challenging engineering problems for engineers. And they'll say, this is the experience we want to create. And the engineers will say, whoa, that's kind of crazy. We never thought of that, but it's really interesting. Let's see if we can fix it. Let's see if we can solve it. And so if we create space within the projects for both design and engineering, we can create a very healthy creative tension where smart people with different skills bounce off each other. But it will require effectively leadership from engineering leads who will say, hey, hold on, we have to create space in this project to prioritize the ideas that come from these crazy people, the usability guys and the designers. There are some